always put everything into other documents. So if you ever want to know what we're doing, or if you ever want to go back, you can always pull these, the slides and or handouts. If you go to other documents in the training and slides is where you'll find this information. And then if you need to know like what trainings we have going on, look for training information. We always keep our Zoom links out there. We always keep you up to date with what we have and how to get things. And then if you do have multiple people watching with you today, always make sure that you do a sign-in sheet, and all of this stuff you will keep at with your records for child nutrition, because they'll ask to look at that when they come out to do your review. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Again, this is offer versus serve. We're going to go through offer versus serve for both lunch and for breakfast. And again, this is a required training. It is a training. So civil rights, offer versus serve are required trainings if your school does offer versus serve. And then ABVM is required for at least one person in the district to attend. Okay. So offer versus serve. So today we're going to go over like understanding the advantages of offer versus serve and know the requirements, because offer versus serve is different at breakfast and at lunch. And then knowledge of meal pattern requirements for all age groups. We're kind of going to go over that a little bit in offer versus serve. So what is offer versus serve? It allows students to decline some food components, items, and select foods they intend to eat. So if you have not done offer versus serve before, and this is newer, I can't talk highly enough about offer versus serve. Now, I understand I've been to lots of schools in the state of Oklahoma. I've been around doing this for quite a while. My name, I never seem to introduce myself. My name's Kendra Marvell. I am the director of training. Before I came into the office, I was in the field for 10.5 years as a program specialist, aka consultant. So I have been in lots of schools and have seen lots of different ways of how this can be done. So offer versus serve, it is mandatory for high school at lunch. It is optional for all grades at breakfast, and it is optional for anybody else besides the high school for lunch. It is not allowed at snack, because at snack you're only allowed 2 components, so they cannot decline any. And they must be offered the full amount. So whatever it is that they're wanting, whatever component it is, if they need it in a half a cup, then they have to be offered the full amount. It's the same price if a child declines an item or if they take it, and then children can decide what they want. The big thing about offer versus serve is it helps with food cost, tremendously with food cost. So what happens what gets hard about August is because every year things are just a little bit different. For instance, like last year, your kids love spaghetti with meat sauce. And then this year they don't like it at all, which you had it like every week because they loved it so much. And this year they don't really seem to like it. So at the beginning of the year, it's kind of hard. You're having to learn and to play, you're trying to learn what the kids like. So question, does elementary include K through 4? Yes. Elementary is anything under high school. So it goes whatever it is with your accredited school, what your elementary school is, what your middle school is, and what your high school is. So whatever grade your high school is in, that's the only thing that's mandatory. Everything else is optional. I have had some schools that I've seen that they don't like doing offer versus serve for pre-K and kindergarten. And they said the reason what they had noticed in their schools is that if they have them try everything those 2 years, and they tend to because they're getting exposed to it, that they will eat it better when they're older. But the one thing about offer versus serve is once you start figuring out how many kids take what, so for instance, like you have 300 kids and beans are required as a vegetable at lunch. So you have 300 kids, but you're noticing only like 30 kids are taking the beans. When you're doing offer versus serve, once you start figuring out how many kids are taking it, you only have to open up enough for those 30 kids. Now, I would have stuff on backup just in case, because I have had it before where I was at a school district and they actually did not have a vegetable on the line at lunch. And so I had them put a vegetable out. I'm like, just open one can because of what they were serving. And they ended up going through 12 cans. So, but they had this fruit and they didn't eat all of the fruit. So it really does help with food costs. Is if you have 300 kids and you're opening up enough number 10 cans of beans for 300 kids, but only 30 take it, that's a lot of waste. So with offer versus serve, you're allowed to just open up what the kids will eat. So a question is, can you do offer versus serve for certain grades? Example, just versus serve for 3rd and 4th grade? Yes. So the biggest thing with offer versus serve is whoever fills out your application. We see this time and time again. Whoever fills out your application in the site application. So every site in the application, you have to go in and check what grades are doing offer versus serve. So we check that when we come out to do a review. And a lot of times what happens is you say you're doing offer versus serve for certain grades, but it's not in the application or vice versa. So make sure whoever fills out the application is aware of who gets offer versus serve. And I will tell you right now, the ones that get it the quickest, people are like, I would never do it for my pre-K or kindergarten. They learn fast. What you do is at the line when they come in, it's like you're sitting there with green beans. Do you want green beans? Do you want green beans? Do you want green beans? Ask them that for 2 weeks. That's all you have to do. And if they take it or say no, so they know that they can decline the item. The ones that don't do it very well are your middle school kids. And just being honest, what I have noticed is the hormones kick in, they're in la land, they don't know what day it is, and they're the ones that are almost the worst at it. So people give little kids a bad rap, but I promise you, they pick it up the quickest. So all you have to do is ask them, do you want whatever it is that you're serving? So if you're on peaches and green beans that day, just say, do you want peaches? Do you want green beans? Do you want peaches? Do you want green beans? And they'll just say yes or no. So, and people think it takes forever. If they say yes, you give it to them. If it says no, they just keep moving through the line. So we're going to talk about what offer versus serve is. They can't decline everything. There are some things that are required to be on the plate in order for it to be a reimbursable meal. If they don't take enough items, then it is not a reimbursable meal. So who decides? It's always the school that decides if you want to be offer versus serve and for what grades. If you are with a food service management company, it is not up to them to choose. It is up to the school district. So just kind of throwing that out there. And grades utilizing offer versus serve, again, it must be indicated on the online application and agreement under number 14 in each site application. So whoever is filling out the application in every single site. Now in the high school for lunch, it's going to be grayed out because it's mandatory for them. So you can't click yes or no, whatever your high school is as accreditation, but you do select what grades you want to do offer versus serve. And again, I talked about the benefits. Is the biggest one is plate waste. It saves in food costs, and you all know how much food is costing right now. And then again, you only prepare enough food about what the district, what you need. So one thing, you have production records. So when you're going through your production records, that's what you can kind of tell. So at first in August, you may be preparing more. Let's just say it's broccoli. I happen to love broccoli. I think a lot of kids like broccoli more than what you think. Again, you have 300 kids. Let's just say you prepare enough for 150 kids, but be prepared to maybe open up more just in case. But you go through and look and see, did you have leftovers? How much leftovers did you have? So that way you can kind of look and see with your old past production records, are the kids taking it? Did you have to open up more cans? Did you have any leftovers? How much? That's how you start getting to know how much you start opening up. But again, sometimes you have kids that will start liking it, but always be prepared in case you need to open something else up. If you don't have more of the item, then make sure you have a backup. So let's say it is beans and you're trying a different bean. Let's say you're doing a ranch style bean instead of refried beans, and the kids maybe are liking it more, and they're seeing like the other kids going through the line that are getting ranch style beans versus refried beans. So you may have more kids that want it. You may not have enough can of ranch style beans, but make sure you do have something that you can open up a vegetable just in case kids are asking for it, because you have to always be offering every component to every child that goes through that line. So the biggest thing when it comes to offer versus serve, that's the difference between breakfast and for lunch, is one is based off of your food component. So it depends. Remember, we have 5 food components. We have fruit, milk, vegetable, meat alternate, and a grain. And then we have what's called a food item. And a food item is just a specific food item offered within those components. So for one, it goes by components, and by the other one, it goes by food item. And we're going to go more in depth about this. And I will tell you, we have some trick questions in here as well. So I have at least one question in here that most people kind of get wrong, but we did it on purpose because we want you to understand what offer versus serve is. Now, it is required to have offer versus serve signage. The school must be able to identify what constitutes a reimbursable meal at or near the beginning of the line. I'm going to grab a book here. Oh, I grabbed the wrong book. Provide clear information about the choices that students can take. Schools using offer versus serve must tell the students what to select on the tray to be a reimbursable meal. And we do have signage in other documents under cars. And I'm trying to remember what it might be. I think it's under resources. We just updated this. It was Sherry who's like, can we please revamp this? The one we had for about 12 years. Let me grab my book. What did I do? Oh, it is right here. I have all my books out, but we did just revamp it. So we do have a copy of this. If you went to ABVM, this was given in your packet as well, but this is what the new one looks like. It's really bright and colorful. So this is the one for lunch, and then we have one for breakfast on another page. So if you need some new signs, you can go and print these out. But it also, whoever went to ABVM, all of the handouts that they got this year are all just regular paper. So you may want to put it in a slicky, or you can laminate it, or whatever you choose to do. Oh, here it is. The signage. This is what it looks like. So again, we did revamp it. If you have your old ones and you like your old ones, you are more than welcome to use those, but we did want to revamp them just to look a little bit better and just to make it colorful, and just, we like to update things periodically just to make it look good. Okay, so let's start with breakfast. We're going to start with the breakfast program. So at breakfast, you are required to serve 3 components. So you're required to do fruit, and it has to be 1 cup of fruit, a grain, and we're going to go with the K through 12 meal pattern. That is what the majority of schools do for their school. They just do K through 12 for everybody. So when we do offer versus serve, we're going to go through the K through 12 meal pattern. If you do have your slides, you may want to keep it just to this page when we go through doing the offer versus serve, the examples, or when we go through a little game that we're going to play. So K through 12, but everybody has to always get 1 cup no matter what it is. Then 2 ounces of grains and a meat alternate. So you have to do a grain, or you can do 2 grains, or you can do a grain and a meat. So you can't just do 2 meats, which you used to be able to do. So at breakfast, you have to offer at least 1 grain. You have to have 2 ounce equivalent, but they have to be either 2 grains, or you can do a grain and a meat. And then a half a pint of milk. And just a reminder that K through 8 meal pattern only requires 1 ounce equivalent of grain and not 2 ounces, but the weekly requirement is higher. So there are certain days that you do have to give more than 1 item if you do the K through 8 meal pattern at your site. So at breakfast, when it comes to offer versus serve, you have to offer 4 food items. So with offer versus serve, you offer 4 food items in those 3 components. So a student must select 3 of the 4 items. They can only decline 1. They are allowed to take everything. So no matter what we're doing, even if you're offer versus serve, they can always have everything that you offer. And then 1 item must be at least a half a cup fruit or vegetable or juice. Okay. So again, you have to have 4 food items, and most of you do. When you're serving at breakfast, you're usually doing 4 food items. A lot of you are doing more than 4 items, because as an example, let's say that you're doing juice. Then you have to do an edible fruit, and then you're doing milk. And let's just say you do cereal and toast. So you just gave them 5 items. And for offer versus serve, they only have to have 3 items on their plate. You're required to do 4, but again, a lot of you are offering more than 4, but they have to have 3 food items on their plate, not components, but food items. So it is a little bit easier, but it's just kind of different thinking than it is at lunch. Okay, So again, a menu for offer versus serve is 4 food items. And here's an example. If you do a half a cup of apple sauce, a half a cup of orange juice, a 2-ounce biscuit, a half pint of white 1% milk or fat-free chocolate. And then children can select all items that are offered, or again, they only have to have 3 food items on their plate. If a child wants the juice and the fruit, they can have both of them. I have been to schools in the past who are like, nope, you can only have one. You can't do that. It is part of the reimbursable meal. If they want everything, they can have everything. So you can't say, no, you can't deny somebody part of the reimbursable meal. Okay, so now we're going to get to the game time. So get your chat open. You have a little smiley face in your chat. So if you want to use emojis, you can do that. You can do, you can do hearts, you can do whatever you want to do. You can do Y, you can say yes, you can do N for no, you can do an X for no, you can do whatever you want to do. So everybody get your chat open and we're going to go through this. Okay, so is this a breakfast tray, a reimbursable meal? So they're having 1 ounce grain of cereal. They're having 1 toast. They have 1/4 of a cup of blueberries, and they have a half a pint of milk. Getting lots of good answers here. And you guys are all correct. The reason why is, yes, they had 4 food items on their tray, but they did not have enough fruit. The requirement is any tray cannot have less than a half a cup of fruit and or vegetable, or a combination of both on the tray to be a reimbursable meal. Okay, so here's the next one. Is this one a reimbursable meal? They're having 1 ounce equivalent toast, 1 fruit cup at a half of a cup, and 1 pint of milk. So is this what is on the tray? If you are offer versus serve, is this a reimbursable meal? And we're getting some mixed answers, which is good. I actually like to see a lot of, because it's very learning. So is this a reimbursable meal? And the answer is yes. And the reason why is because we didn't list the food items that was offered to them. This is what they received on the plate. They had 3 food items on the tray, and 1 was a half a cup of fruit or vegetables. So we didn't list the whole menu of what was offered. We just list what was on the plate, but it was a reimbursable meal. So if it's somebody at the end of the line that's checking the tray for a reimbursable meal, it is reimbursable because all they have to have is 3 food items versus components. So it gets very different at breakfast. So again, it is a reimbursable meal because they had 3 food items and there was a half a cup of fruit or vegetable on the tray. Okay, so now we have on the tray, we have juice, a half a cup. We have blueberries in a half a cup and milk in a half a cup. Is this a reimbursable meal? Because remember, in breakfast, they have to have 3 food items on their tray, and 1 has to be a half a cup of fruit or vegetable. And give it just a couple more. And yes, it is reimbursable because, again, there were 3 food items on the tray, and they had at least 1. They had a full cup, actually, of fruit or vegetable, but they had juice, they had fruit, and they had milk. And I know it sounds very bizarre because you had 2 liquids on there and only 1 edible, but it really is a reimbursable meal because with breakfast, it's only based on food items. It is not based on components. I know it's a very different concept, and that's what makes offer versus serve at breakfast tough. Okay, we have another one for breakfast. So they have a 2-ounce muffin, they have eggs, and they have a milk. Is this a reimbursable meal? They do have 3 food items on the tray. Again, the 2-ounce muffin, they have 1 half pint of milk and eggs. You guys are so good, because the biggest thing that everybody's had to learn about offer versus serve is no, because there is no half a cup of fruit and or vegetable on there. Good job, guys. Good job. Okay. This is another reimbursable meal for breakfast. Is this so if I'm at the end of the line and I'm checking out, would you guys tell me that is this a reimbursable meal for breakfast, or would you tell me no, it's not? And very good. You guys are doing so good. It is not, because they only had 2 items on the tray. So more than likely you will tell them to either go back and get something else, or if you're the type of school that if they don't want to get something else, you may tell them that you'll charge them a la carte. And I've had schools do that. So if a kid does not want to go back and get something for it to be a reimbursable meal, I have schools that will charge them a la carte for those items. So it's however you choose to do it. Okay, we have another one. We have a 2-ounce muffin. We have a half a cup of juice, a half a cup of blueberries, and a half pint of milk. Is this a reimbursable meal? Good job. It looks like that this child took everything that was available to them. So they took everything. So it's a reimbursable meal. They only needed 3 items, but they went ahead and took 4. Very, very good. Do you guys feel better about breakfast? Do you have any questions regarding breakfast before we start offer versus serve for lunch? It just that's what gets very complicated about breakfast. Again, it's only based on food items. It's just the number of things on the tray, as long as, and one has to be juice or a fruit in a half a cup portion. So if they have a juice and then they took a little bit of fruit, which, I mean, you're really not going to offer that, but just in case they took a 1/4 of a cup of fruit and a half a cup of juice, they do, if they have everything else on there, as long as a total amount is a half a cup on there. But again, they can have 2 drinks. They can have milk and juice like you saw. And then they can also have just the edible fruit. So for greens is only 1 ounce okay. 1 ounce is okay. Yes, because it's just based on food items. And it just is based on food items for offer versus serve at breakfast. So if you offer, say, 1 ounce of toast and 1 cereal, then yes, they only have to take 1 of those items, because we understand as a total that you're offering the 2 full ounces, but you broke it up into 2 1-ounce things. So that's, I know it gets very complicated with breakfast, but yes, they can only take 1 ounce if you say do the toast and cereal. As long as they have the 3 food items in the portion size that you listed on the menu, then you are good. So I know breakfast, very complicated, but yes. 1 cup of fruit for breakfast. So yes, so in this slide, it says 1 cup of fruit for breakfast. So why is a half considered okay? So you are required at breakfast to have a total of 1 cup of fruit available at breakfast. Most, I would say 99.9% of schools do a fruit, an edible fruit, and a juice. And the reason why they split it up into 2 items is because you are only allowed for the week to serve 50% of the fruit or vegetable that you serve during the week can be in the form of juice. So if you're doing a half ounce, or if you're doing a half a cup of juice every day, then a lot of times you're doing a half a cup of edible food every day, because if you serve more juice than edible fruit, then it's a finding. It's a finding on the review. So when you split it up into 2, you have a half a cup and half a cup. And by rule of USDA, you're only required for a part of a reimbursable meal is to have a half a cup of fruit or vegetable on the tray in order to be a reimbursable meal. And that's both at breakfast and at lunch. So yes, 1 cup is required to be offered per day, but you can split it up into 2 items, and then they only have to have a half a cup. So I hope that makes sense. Let me turn. I have a heater going. It gets very cold in this office. So I hope that makes sense, but it's however you plan your menus. But that's how most people do it, is at breakfast, they do juice 50%, and then they do edible fruit the next. So let's get into meal patterns for lunch. So we're going to talk about the K through 8 meal pattern and the 9 through 12 meal pattern. So this is what is required to be offered. So you have to offer a half a cup of fruit at lunch for K through 8, and a vegetable is required to offer 3/4 of a cup, grains 1 ounce, meat alternate 1 ounce. But again, there are weekly requirements, so you do have to go over the 1 ounce for the week, and meat you'll have to go over that for the week, but we're talking daily right now, and then a half a pint of milk. Now the 9 through 12, what has to be offered every day is 1 cup of fruit, 1 cup of vegetable, and some of you may get offered 2 vegetable. You may do a half a cup and a half a cup. Some of you may do 2 different fruits. So it just depends on how you menu plan that. Your grain for the 9 through 12, there have to be required 2 ounce equivalent. The meat alternate is required to be 2 ounce equivalent, and the milk is a half a pint. So that is the meal pattern that is required to be offered. Now, if you're not offer versus serve for those that are under your high school, you have to give them a half a cup of fruit, 3/4 cup vegetable, at least 1 grain, whatever you menued that day, your 1 ounce or whatever you menued that day of meat alternate, and the half pint of milk. All of that in the full serving size has to be on the tray if you are not offer versus serve. So if you're not offer versus serve, they have to have everything in the full required amount. But if you're offer versus serve, then there's some things that you can do to help out with food costs. So this is where it gets a little tricky with USDA. So with breakfast, it was food items. Okay, food items. With lunch, it is food components, not items, it's components. So they again have to have 3 items. They have to have 3 components on their tray. Not food items, 3 components. So even if your fruit at the high school, you offer 2 fruits and you offer 2 vegetable, they have to leave with 3 components on their tray, not 3 food items. One of those, again, must be at least a half a cup of fruit, vegetable, or juice, or a combination of both. And then 9 through 12 are allowed to take both fruit and vegetable, but only 1 item can be in the half cup portion. The other component must be a full cup if they only take 3 items. And I'll give you kind of an example of that. So let's say that for lunch, you are offering a salad, you're offering an apple, you're offering a roll. Let's say you're having meatloaf and milk. And you have a child that comes through the line and they don't want the meatloaf and they don't want the milk. All they want is the salad, apple, or a roll. And sometimes you might see this in your kids that are vegetarian or watching their meat intake. So if they're getting an apple, salad, or a roll, one of those has to be in the full cup portion. The other one can be dropped down to the half a cup if the student chooses. They may want the full cup of vegetable, the full cup of fruit, because they're only getting those 3 items. So if they're only getting 3 items and 2 of those items are the fruit and the vegetable, then only 1 can be dropped down to the half a cup. They are required to get a full cup serving in the other component. But if they want the full cup of both, they are allowed for that. Now, again, at lunch, students can decline 2 food components. Again, they can take all 5. They are not at any time for any offer versus serve. The milk is not required or the entree is not required. And the entree term is an old term from before 2012, but a lot of you still might use the term entree. They can decline the entree and they can decline the milk. Again, they can take all 5 items if they want in the full portion sizes. And a high school can have both fruit and vegetable in a 1 cup portion. And middle school and elementary can take the full 3/4 cup portion of vegetable and a half a cup of fruit if they choose. But you are allowed to drop the vegetable. If a child says, I don't want that much, you can give them less on the vegetable at lunch. Okay, so we're going to go ahead, get your trays ready, get your fingers ready on your chat. So would this be considered a reimbursable meal for any age group? Because for hamburger, they got 2 ounces of meat alternate. They had a 3 ounce equivalent bread and they had a half pint of milk. would this be considered a reimbursable meal if they get to the end of the line? Good job. You are correct. They do have 3 components. They did have a meat alternate, they did have a bread, and they did have a milk. But however, they are missing the fruit or the vegetable. So again, it is required to have at least a half a cup of fruit or vegetable on the tray to be a reimbursable meal. So we have to go back to our component thinking for lunch. So this is a tray from a child. And if it's a K-8 menu, they took a 3/4 cup of peas, they took a 1 pint of milk and a half a cup of blueberries. And for the high school kids, they took 1 cup of peas, 1/2 pint of milk, that should be a 1/2 pint of milk, and 1.5 a cup of blueberries. Is this a reimbursable meal for either or, for K-8 or for high school? You guys did so good. And yes, it is a reimbursable meal because they did take the 3 components. And the high school kids took, 1 was in the full portion size, 1 was in a half a cup, and the same for the K-8. They took the full portion size of 1 item and they took a half a cup of the other, which for K-8, it is the regular, is half a cup of fruit and 3/4 cup of vegetables. So great job. Good job, guys. Okay, so was this a reimbursable meal? If they take a half a pint of milk, if they take a 1/4 of a cup of celery, and then per the CN label, they take, it's an 1/8 of a cup of vegetable, 2-ounce meat alternate, and 2-ounce equivalent grain. You guys are really good at your lunch, and I have no surprise at that. Like I said, we usually see the issues at the breakfast because it is very different than it is at lunch, and you guys are correct. If it would have been a 1/4 of a cup of vegetable on that pizza, it would have been, but because it was not a 1/4 of a cup, it was not the half a cup required in order for it to be a reimbursable meal. And not really that you guys would plan for a 1/4 of a cup a vegetable, but we just like to give examples. Maybe you have a food bar or a salad bar that's part of the reimbursable meal, and a child went through that line and just took a couple of sticks that ended up being a 1/4 of a cup instead of a half a cup. And again, you'd probably, if that was the case, you'd maybe have them go back and get more. Okay, so what about this one? They have a hamburger, a 2-ounce, 3-ounce equivalent bun. They took a half a cup of broccoli, a 1/4 of a cup of salad, and an orange is a 1/4 of a cup, and then milk is a half a pint. Is this a reimbursable meal? And good job. They actually, it looks like they took all components. Some looks like a little bit less than the portion size, but as a total, they did leave the line with a half a cup of fruit and or vegetable. So therefore, it was a reimbursable meal for everybody. Good job. What about this one? So per the CN label, the pizza, again, is an 1/8 of a cup of vegetable. It's a 1/2 ounce meat, 2-ounce equivalent grain. They took a half pint of milk and then a 1/4 of a cup of blueberries. You guys are doing so good. Yes, you are correct. Again, it was not that full serving size. They did not get a total of a half a cup. Again, they only got an 1/8 of a cup from the pizza and a 1/4 of a cup from the blueberries. Great job. Okay, so they have pizza. And again, with the CN label, it's an 1/8 of a cup of vegetable, 2 ounces of meat alternate, 2-ounce equivalent grain, and then a half a cup of fruit with applesauce. Would this be considered a reimbursable meal? Great job. You are correct. It is a reimbursable meal because they have the two components. They have three components, but they have on the pizza, it's two components combined. It is the cheese and the bread, which is the meat alternate, and the grain, and then they took a half a cup of fruit. Now, if you were to serve a breakfast pizza, so let's say you had a breakfast pizza and a fruit, would that also be for breakfast? Would that be a reimbursable meal? Because it goes by food items at breakfast. And that one is a tricky one. It's by food items, so they have to have 3 food items on the tray. But if you come into that situation, just check with us, because I'll tell you when we come out to do a review, we're very, like, we see things all the time with breakfast that even we have to remind ourselves on, because breakfast is just trickier than it is for lunch, because we're all used to the components. Okay, so what about this one? So we do have two. We have the K through 8 and we have the high school. And the K through 8, they took a half a cup of peas, a half a cup or a half pint of milk, and then they also took the half cup of blueberries. And then the K through 8, they took the half a cup, and they took the same thing for high school, and they took the same thing for K through 8. And this is one of those trick questions, and I'm seeing lots of correct answers. And I understand too, like just the typing, like I'm a little bit slower to chat. So it is a reimbursable meal for the K through 8, but it is not a reimbursable meal for high school. And the reason for that is because for the K through 8, the requirement is 3/4 cup of vegetable for K through 8 and a half a cup of blueberries. Well, the thing is you can drop one of those items down to be a reimbursable meal. And they did that, and they did it with the vegetable, but the fruit, they still gave them the full serving size that was required per the meal pattern. So you are correct that yes, the K through 8, it is a reimbursable meal. But for high school kids, that's where it gets tricky and is not a reimbursable meal, because there's only both the vegetable and both the fruit are to be 1 cup serving sizes. So they were only allowed to drop down one of those, and they did both. So you guys, very, very, very good. That's usually the one that gets most people. But again, I know it gets complicated too with the 2 different meal patterns, and depending at what school that you're at, you may only focus on the K through 8, or you may only focus on the high school. So I understand that. So that's why we kind of did both, but we just wanted to let you know that what one child gets versus what another child might get at a different age. So good job. And again, it was yes for K through 8 and no for 9 through 12. And what about this one? We have the hamburger. You guys are really good at this. The hamburger, that's a meat alternate and the grain, and then also the applesauce, which is in a half a cup portion size. And this again would be for all. It doesn't matter if it was high school or K through 8. You guys have really gotten the, I can tell you guys are your whizzes at lunch. And I do understand too, again, you may not have your kids at breakfast be offer versus serve. So, you don't have to, you don't have to have anybody be offer versus serve at breakfast. You can have everybody be offer versus, or you can have even your high school is not required. And the reason for that is, I believe, just looking at USDA, is because we have a lot of schools in Oklahoma that you have one cafeteria and you have lots of kids getting off the bus, and you could have literally a kindergartner, and behind them you could have a 10th grader and then a 4th grader. So that's why they allow for K through 12 for breakfast, because everybody could be going through the line at the same time, depending on when they get off the bus. So many of you may not want them to be offer versus serve at breakfast. You just give everybody everything, which you can do at breakfast, but maybe everybody is offer versus serve. It's really up to you. It's the school's decision on what you want to do to be offer versus serve. Again, the only requirement is at high school, there is no waivers this year. Everybody, again, they have to be offer versus serve at high school. So I'm going to give you just a little bit additional information on offer versus serve. There's sometimes when it's actually not required. Offer versus serve is not required if you do breakfast in the classroom, if you do field trips, if you do grab and go breakfast after the bell, or if you are an RCCI. So I understand that we usually have grade limits, but if you are doing one of these points of service, it's not required to do offer versus serve. If this is the case, just make sure that in the site application, we actually ask these questions in the site application. And this is normal. This is before COVID. We had a lot of people that did grab and go breakfast. I had a lot of schools for their high school. I guess not a lot. I had a handful of schools for high school before COVID. They would do a grab and go breakfast after first hour. They would go to random spots in the building. So this was all pre-COVID. This is not since COVID. This was all, and there's a question in the site application if you do any of these points of service, and you just say yes, or if you do. But again, it's not COVID related. It's all if you did it before COVID and you're going back to what you did as the grab and go breakfast. So I just want to kind of clarify that. So again, just a quick review. Breakfast, you have to offer 4 food items. That's what you have to offer. But again, most of you do a lot more than 4 food items. You guys maybe do 4 to 5, especially if you do the juice and the edible fruit, you're going to definitely do 4 food items. The child only has to have 3 food items on the tray. And again, one has to be a half a cup of fruit or vegetable if you do a vegetable at breakfast. At lunch, it's 5 components that have to be offered. Again, the child only has to leave leave the line with 3 food components, and one of those components has to be at least a half of a cup of fruit and or vegetable. So you guys did a great job today. I hope you like this training. This is one of our favorites that we've done. It's very interactive. It just kind of makes it a little bit more fun. But you guys did a very good job. I hope you feel like you learned something today. You guys are done. So thank you guys for this little training. I am doing food production records this afternoon at 1 o'clock. It's a 1-hour training as well. So people that are filling out the food production record, I highly suggest that one. Again, these slides are out in the resource library. I mean, they're in the other documents. So if you want to train your staff, you can definitely use the slides. We have it 1 per page, so you can do that. And then this will be up in OSDE Connect as well. They'll be kind of the same format. But it's a little bit different, me doing it live, but it will look the same, but things kind of zoom in. It's kind of neat. So if you have other staff that need that, you can have them do that as well. I'm hoping it should be up. You'll get an email from us, but hopefully it will be up by the end of the week. But again, just give us 1 week to send out certificates. We're working as quickly as we possibly can, but you guys have a wonderful, wonderful day. I'm going to stick around for a few minutes for questions, but you guys stay cool out there and have a great 2023.